My 18-year-old brother-in-law came to visit my farm, and then this happened. It was supposed to be a quiet summer, just me, the horses, and a long stretch of silence on the family ranch in northern Montana. I wasn't expecting visitors, I wasn't expecting him, but when my 18-year-old brother-in-law showed up at my gate with nothing but a backpack and that half-shy, half-defiant look in his eyes, something shifted. At first I thought I was just being protective, just helping out a kid who needed space, but the days grew longer. The silences between us deeper, and the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, that was not how a brother-in-law is supposed to look at someone. What happened next I never saw coming, and it changed everything. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That way you won't miss any of our upcoming stories full of love, tension, and self-discovery. I heard the engine before I saw him. Out here you learn to recognize every sound. A truck on gravel isn't just a truck, it's a story arriving uninvited in the middle of your routine. And that day I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not him. The pickup stopped by the front gate, kicking up dust and cutting through the silence like it didn't belong. I stepped off the porch, wiping my hands on my jeans. The sun was just starting to drop behind the hills, casting everything in that golden Montana haze, and then the door opened. I recognized him instantly, even though he had changed. Mason, 18 now, taller than I remembered, his hair longer, falling in waves over his forehead. There was a shadow of scruff along his jaw, like he was trying to prove something. Maybe he was. He pulled off his backpack, smiled awkwardly, and said, "Hey." I stared for a second longer than I should have. "Didn't know you were coming," I said. He shrugged, slinging the bag over his shoulder. "Mom and Dad flew to Cabo. Said I should do something useful with my summer, so they sent you here." He laughed, that crooked grin I remembered from 3 years ago before he disappeared. "Behind exams, girlfriends, and that prep school life, you're always talking about the ranch at Thanksgiving." Figured I'd see what the fuss was about. I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. We didn't hug, we'd never been close, just family through marriage. My sister married his older brother 5 years ago. Holidays, birthdays, that was it. But still, the air felt strange the moment he stepped past me, charged. I showed him to the guest room and warned him about the early mornings. "I get up at 5, I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Is that when the horses wake up?" "It's when I wake them up." He smirked and tossed his bag on the bed. That night, we ate leftovers at the kitchen counter side by side. He asked about the ranch, how I ran it alone, if it ever got lonely, if the isolation ever messed with my head. I gave him short answers, half watching his face in the reflection of the window. He asked if I ever thought of leaving. "No," I said. "Out there." I pointed through the glass. "It's the only place I've ever felt like I could breathe." He didn't respond right away. Then softly, "Maybe that's why I came." I looked over at him. He wasn't smiling. There was something in his eyes, something unspoken. I cleared my throat. "We start early. You'll need boots." I brought some. Of course he had. The next morning I found him already outside, barefoot, shirt off, leaning against the fence with coffee in hand, like he'd been born here. The sunrise hit his skin and I felt something twist in my chest. I looked away before he noticed. "Ready?" I asked. He smirked. "You tell me." We worked the fields, fed the horses, and fixed the barn gate. He didn't complain once, even when he dropped a wrench on his toe. He just laughed and called himself an idiot. I couldn't figure him out. Was he running from something? Was he testing me? Or was this just curiosity, a kid trying to play cowboy for a week? That night after dinner I found him sitting alone in the stable, brushing one of the mares. It was quiet, peaceful. He looked over when I walked in. "I like it here," he said. I leaned on the stall door. "It's honest work." He nodded, then he stood slowly and walked toward me. There was dust on his neck, a smudge of hay on his shirt. He stopped closer than I expected. "Can I ask you something?" I hesitated. "Yeah." He looked up at me, eyes steady. "Do you ever feel like you're waiting for something to happen, but you don't know what?" My mouth went dry. He didn't blink. Neither did I. What did he mean by that? And why did I feel like I was the one he'd been waiting for? The next morning I told myself it had been Nothing, just a strange question in a quiet barn. Maybe he was tired, maybe I was reading into it too much. The ranch had a way of pulling thoughts out of your head that you didn't want to face. Silence echoed here. That could get dangerous, but I couldn't forget the way he looked at me, not like a brother-in-law, not like a kid I'd felt. I knew I had. Still, I kept my distance. We saddled up and rode out. Early, Mason took to the horses faster than I expected. He wasn't graceful, but he was determined, and there was something about watching him out there holding the reins tight, sunlight hitting his jawline, wind in his shirt. It made something flutter in my chest I hadn't felt in a long time. "Why'd you never get married?" he asked. Suddenly, as we rode side by side, I kept my eyes ahead. "Not everyone needs that kind tie, but you could have, maybe." He didn't ask anything else, but the question lingered, bouncing around inside me like a pebble in a can. That night a storm rolled in fast and loud. The sky cracked open with thunder around. 9. We just finished storing feed in the shed and ran inside soaked to the bone. I handed him a towel at the door. "You'll catch a cold." He pulled off his shirt right there in the kitchen and started drying his hair. His chest glistened with rain, slim but defined. I looked away too fast, too hard. He caught me and didn't say a word, just grinned slow. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "too fast, just tired." He nodded. "Long day," but he didn't move. Neither did I. The only sound was the storm outside and the slow drip of water from his hair hitting the floor. He finally walked past me, brushing my shoulder on the way to the hallway. That small contact sent a current through my spine. The next morning things felt different. He didn't talk as much over breakfast, didn't ask questions during the chores, but I felt his eyes on me constantly, quietly watching when I bent to lift a saddle or wiped my brow with the back of my arm. I pretended not to notice until that afternoon. I'd been clearing brush near the south fence when I realized he wasn't in sight. I called his name, no answer. My chest tightened. Then I found him in the loft above the barn, sitting with his back against a wooden beam, legs stretched out, staring at the ceiling. "You okay?" I asked, climbing up. He didn't look at me right away. "I just needed air," he said. "There's plenty of that outside." He laughed softly. "Not the same kind." I sat across from him, leaving a good 6 ft between us. He looked tired, not physically. Emotionally. "I'm not going back," he said after a long pause. "To the city, to all of it. School, my parents, the plans they made." I studied him. "So what are you going to do?" He looked at me, then really looked at me. "I don't know. That's the truth, but I know how I feel when I'm here and when I'm with you." The words hung in the air like smoke. I should have said something, but I didn't. Because I couldn't, because I felt it too. He leaned forward just slightly. "I think you feel it too," he said, and then a sound, boots on the gravel outside. I stood fast, heart racing. "Someone's here." He followed me to the edge of the loft, peeking out the side window. A white truck pulled up by the house. My sister, his brother, Mason's family here. Now, why did they come unannounced, and how much had they already figured out? They weren't supposed to be here. My sister Emily climbed out of the truck first, wearing jeans that hadn't seen dirt in months and sunglasses too big for the Montana sun. Her husband, Mason's older brother Troy, came around from the driver's side, already annoyed by the dust on his boots. Their presence didn't match the landscape. It was too sudden, too polished. Mason stood behind me as I walked down the path toward them. Emily gave me a half hug. "Surprise." I forced a smile. "Didn't know you two were coming." She waved her hand like it didn't matter. "Last-minute flight. Thought we'd check on the baby brother and see how the cowboy life is treating him." Troy looked past me toward the barn. "He's still alive." Mason didn't say anything, but I could feel the change in his posture behind me, like something inside him had snapped shut. "Yeah," I said, "he's been helping a lot, not just playing ranch hand." Emily smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We're just here for a night," she said. "Didn't mean to intrude, but that's exactly what it felt like." Dinner was strange. Emily brought her city wine. I made chili. We sat on the porch around a makeshift table. Mason barely spoke. His eyes darted between his brother and me like he was bracing for something. At one point Troy asked, "So how's school going?" Mason shrugged. "Haven't decided if I'm going back." Troy scoffed. "You don't Decide that's not how life works. I watched Mason's jaw tighten. He dropped his spoon and stood. I'm going to check on the horses. I stood too, I'll go with him. Troy raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything, as we walked across the gravel. Path toward the barn. Mason didn't look at me. You okay? I asked. He exhaled. Hard. You know why I didn't want to go back? I nodded. They don't listen. They don't see me. The barn was dark, quiet except for the horses shifting in their stalls. Mason leaned against a beam, rubbing his hands through his hair. I stepped closer. You don't owe them your life. He looked up at me. The air changed again like before, but heavier this time. Denser, and then without thinking I reached out. I touched his wrist just lightly, but he didn't pull away. He stepped closer. I wasn't imagining it, was I? He asked. No, we were so close I could feel the heat from his skin. His breath had slowed. I should have stepped back, but I didn't because I didn't want to, and then he touched my side, fingers light, hesitant but deliberate. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I don't care what they think, he said. They'll hate me, I whispered. Maybe, he said, but I'm not scared anymore. A noise cut through the tension, the back door slamming, voices. Laughter. Emily and Troy headed to their car to grab something. Mason dropped his hand fast. We stepped back, but the distance couldn't undo what had just passed between us. He turned away. I should get some air, I nodded. Swallowing hard. Yeah. He walked out into the night, head down. I stayed there alone. In the barn, pulse still pounding, wrist still tingling where his hand had been. Back inside, Emily poured more wine. Troy joked about city traffic and leather seats. I smiled, but my head was somewhere else, somewhere back in that barn, somewhere in that almost moment, that almost kiss, and the way his voice had shaken when he said he wasn't scared anymore. But when I checked his room later that night, he wasn't there. His bed was untouched, his boots were gone. And the front door was still open. Where did Mason go, and what if he left? Because of me, I didn't wake Emily or Troy. I grabbed a flashlight, pulled on my jacket, and slipped out the front door into the dark. The storm clouds from earlier were still hanging low. The moonlight fought to break through, but most of the ranch was cloaked in shadows. I knew every inch of this land, but that night it felt foreign, like something had shifted in the soil itself. I checked the barn first, empty. The fields, nothing. Then I headed down the trail toward the old creek bed where the fence curves and the cottonwoods lean in close. My boots sank into the damp ground, flashlight beam bouncing with every step, and then I saw him sitting on a flat rock by the water, arms wrapped around his knees, hoodie pulled up over his head. Mason, I said quietly. He didn't move. I walked closer. You shouldn't be out here alone. Still no answer. I sat a few feet away, careful not to spook him. Silence between us stretched, heavy but not empty. I wasn't running away, he said finally. I just needed to be somewhere that didn't have walls. I nodded slowly. I get it. He looked at me then. His eyes were red, not from crying, not recently at least, but from holding everything in for too long. They think I'm confused, he said that. I'm acting out, but I've never been more sure about anything in my life. I kept my voice calm. About what? He took a breath. About what I feel about who I. A crack of thunder cut him off, and then the sky opened up. The rain came fast, heavy. We stood at the same time, instinctively. Come on, I said, we'll get soaked. We ran toward the trees, the only nearby shelter, slipping in the mud. When we reached the thickest part of the grove, I stopped under the largest branch and turned to him. He was breathing hard, soaked through, hoodie clinging to his body. This is the second time you've run out into a storm, I said, trying to keep it light. He smiled just barely. Guess I have a thing for chaos. I laughed softly, then looked at him too long, too deeply, and I felt it again. That shift, that pull. He stepped forward, barely a foot between us now, and then he asked it, would you stop me? My throat tightened. Stop you from what? He reached up slowly and pushed the wet hair from his face. From doing this. His hand cupped the side of my neck, gentle, warm despite the rain, and then his lips brushed mine. Not a kiss, a test, a question. I didn't move, I didn't speak, but I didn't stop him either. His forehead rested against mine. I don't care anymore, he whispered. If they don't understand, that's on them. I felt my pulse in my jaw. It's not that simple, but it could be. I stepped back just half a step, not rejection, hesitation. My body was Screaming, yes, but my brain was still standing at that dinner table looking into the eyes of the people who would never forgive this. Let's go, I said finally. You'll catch cold. We didn't speak the whole way back. Emily and Troy were already asleep. When we walked in, dripping and silent, Mason peeled off his hoodie, his shirt clinging to his back. He looked over his shoulder at me as he climbed the stairs. And something in that glance said, this isn't over. I couldn't sleep. The house felt different, like it was waiting. At 3:22 a.m. my phone buzzed. A text from Mason, just one line. If I came to your room, would you let me in? I stared at the screen, heart racing, then typed, me. The hallway creaked, a shadow paused by my door, then fingers curled around the edge. Did he step inside, and what happens when secrets stop being secrets? The door didn't creak, he opened it slowly, like he already knew the weight of what he was doing. And when Mason stepped into my room, barefoot, damp curls still clinging to his forehead, everything inside me froze and then collapsed at once. He didn't say anything, he just looked at me, the kind of look that doesn't ask for permission but hopes it's granted. I sat up in bed, the blanket slipped down my chest, my heart pounding so loud it hurt. I couldn't sleep, he said, voice low, almost guilty. Me neither. He stood there unsure, so I lifted the blanket and he came, not fast, not urgent, carefully, like stepping into a space we'd both imagined too many times to count. He sat beside me, eyes locked on mine, his hand finding my wrist, the same spot I'd touched days ago in the barn. This time he didn't let go. I leaned forward and we kissed, not hard, not desperate, just real slow. His hand rested on my neck, thumb at my jaw, as if trying to memorize the shape of who I was, and I let him. All the noise, the guilt, the fear, the rules melted under his touch. We lay down, fully clothed, tangled in something too fragile to name. No words, no promises, just breath and warmth and the simple miracle of being seen. He fell asleep with his head on my shoulder, and for the first time in years I didn't feel alone. Morning light hit hard, too bright, too honest. Mason was still asleep when I heard it, the back door slamming shut. Voices downstairs, too many, then Troy loud. Angry. Mason. I slipped out of bed, heart racing, pulling on a shirt. Mason, he shouted again. Where the hell are you? Mason woke instantly, eyes wide. We have to, too late. Troy's footsteps thundered up the stairs, then the door flung open and the world split. Troy stood in the doorway, saw me, saw Mason. In my bed, Mason bolted upright. Troy's face went pale, then red, then something worse. What the hell is this? I stood chest tight. Troy, you're supposed to be his family. What did you do to him? Mason shouted. He didn't do anything to me. Shut up. Troy lunged. I stepped between them, my hand on his chest. Don't touch him. Emily was behind him now, eyes wide with disbelief. Mason, she said, please tell me this isn't what it looks like. He stepped beside me. I'm not hiding anymore, he said. Her face crumbled. Troy looked at me like I was a stranger, like I'd stolen something sacred. I trusted you, he said. I trusted you. I never asked for that, I said quietly, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. Troy turned and walked out. Emily followed, silent. Mason looked at me, blinking fast. You okay? I asked. He nodded, but he wasn't. We weren't, but we had done something real, and now we'd have to face what came next. That evening Mason packed a bag, not because I asked, because he knew he couldn't stay. They want me to go with them, he said. Do you want to? He shook his head. But maybe I need to, just for now. I nodded, even though it broke me. I'll come back, he said. I stepped closer. Don't say it if you don't mean it. I mean it. He kissed me soft, like a promise, and then he was gone. But 3 days later I got a message. A voice note, his voice low and steady. They're sending me away, out of state, somewhere quiet, but I still feel you, and when I close my eyes I still see the barn, the storm, the creek. You. I don't know what happens next, but I know what I want, and it's you. What do I do now, and how long can someone wait before it's too late? The silence was the hardest part. The house felt bigger without him, the hole longer, the pillow beside mine far too empty. For days I tried to keep things normal, feeding the horses, making the coffee extra strong, sticking to routine like it could anchor me, but everything reminded me of him, the way he used to laugh when he messed up the animals' names, how he'd go quiet when the sky started turning pink at dusk, and the Way he looked at me, I'd listened to that voice message at least 20 times. When I closed my eyes, I still. See you, he didn't know it, but I still saw him too. Everywhere. It happened on a Tuesday. I was in the barn fixing a loose hinge on the gate, late afternoon, golden light slipping between the boards when I heard footsteps, steady, certain. I turned, expecting a neighbor or maybe someone lost, but it was him, Mason, wearing the same worn backpack, the same jacket from the first time he'd arrived, but now he was different, taller, somehow calmer in the eyes. You came back was all I managed. He nodded. My brother hates me, my mom's pretending nothing happened, but I didn't come here for them this time. I dropped the wrench and walked over to him. You didn't have to come now, but I wanted to come now. He stopped just in front of me. Everything in me said to come back. I tried to take a breath, but my throat was too tight. We made things complicated, Mason. It's not impossible, he said. It's just hard, and everything worth it usually is. I laughed softly. You sound older than I do now, he grinned. Maybe I grew up on the road. We stood in silence for a moment. The wind moved through the hay. The swallows flew low. Everything around us felt ready to change. Do you still want me here, he asked. I didn't hesitate. Yes. He stepped forward and I met him halfway. This time the kiss was different. No fear, no secrets, just the release of everything we'd held in for far too long. In the months that followed, he stayed. It wasn't easy. There were looks, whispers, awkward questions. Troy stopped speaking to me. Emily tried to stay in touch, but always from a safe distance. But Mason, he built something here. He helped with the fences, took care of the animals, learned how to bake my grandmother's bread recipe. He laughed more, slept deeper. And every night he came back to my bed without hiding. The first time he held my hand in public was at the town fair. I thought I'd pull away, but I didn't. I just smiled and held on. Today, almost a year later, I'm writing this from the porch while Mason feeds the younger colts. He's humming a tune off key, not caring who hears. He's my home now, and I've learned that we don't always get to choose who walks into our life, but we do get to choose who we let stay. I chose him and he chose me back. If this story made you feel something, I want to leave you with this. How many times have you stopped yourself from living something real just because you were afraid of what others might say? How many times have you hidden the thing that made you happy just to fit inside someone else's silence? Maybe it's time to stop. Maybe this is your moment to open the door to let someone in. And if this touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and turn on notifications. Share it with someone who needs to hear that love, real love, is never wrong. It's just rare, and when it happens, it's worth